All right, let's jump right into this explainer and look at what it actually takes to find a mathematical advantage in sports data. Today, we're taking an absolute microscope to the August 10th, 2026 Major League Baseball slate to uncover the anatomy of a true sports betting edge.
It's a question we hear all the time, right? What actually separates your everyday casual fan from a sharp bettor? Well, the answer really comes down to perspective. See, while a casual fan is watching a game for the thrill, the storylines, the roar of the crowd, a sharp bettor, they're essentially trying to solve a massive, complex data puzzle. They're looking completely past the narrative and diving entirely into the numbers.
So, to solve that puzzle today, we're going to follow a 5-step agenda. First, defining the betting edge. Second, the macro view. Third, decoding the money line. Fourth, pitching and deep analytics. And finally, number 5, hidden variables. Okay, step 1, defining the betting edge. Let's start by clarifying exactly what we mean here. The absolutely crucial thing to remember is that an edge isn't about just guessing the winner. It is purely a mathematical concept. It's about synthesizing multiple layers of data to pinpoint probability values that the broader market has just missed or mispriced. Basically, it's hunting for those quiet discrepancies between surface-level perception and deep mathematical reality. Moving right along to step 2, the macro view. Let's pull up our first layer of data and see how this whole thing builds. This right here is what the casual observer sees on the morning of August 10th when they fire up MLB.com. They see the high-level standings, they spot teams like the Milwaukee Brewers sitting pretty at 74-44, the Atlanta Braves right on their heels at 71-47, and the LA Dodgers at 70-48. This macro data establishes your basic everyday narrative. These teams are dominant. Now zero in on tonight's specific matchup in Atlanta. A casual fan looks at this and sees a heavily outmatched New York Mets team carrying a losing 52-67 record going up against that powerhouse 71-47 Braves squad. On the surface, the prevailing storyline says this should be an absolute walk in the park for Atlanta. All right, step 3, decoding the money line. As we funnel a bit deeper, we have to actually translate those win-loss records into live market prices. According to VCIN's sports betting data for tonight's game, the Mets are currently priced at plus 129. If you aren't super familiar, that plus money means they're the underdogs. A bettor stands to win more than their initial wager if the Mets somehow manage to pull off the upset. The market totally expects them to lose, so it incentivizes a bet on them with a much higher payout. Conversely, the Braves sit at minus 156. This means you're required to risk more capital for a smaller return. The market already knows they're the superior team, so you have to pay a premium to back the favorite. But here's the thing. The question a sharp bettor asks isn't, will the Braves win? No. The real question is minus 156 actually a fair price for Atlanta, or is the market overvaluing that shiny 71-win record? To actually figure out if minus 156 or plus 129 is a fair price, analysts bring in advanced tools to dig way past the win-loss columns. They're checking out betting splits to see exactly where the public money is flowing. They're analyzing park factors and YRFI, that's yes run first inning, reports to gauge early game volatility. They leverage team bets analyzers to map out potential game scripts. Ultimately, they are hunting for hard mathematical reasons to either validate or completely fade that minus 156 price tag. Which brings us to step 4, pitching and deep analytics. Now we're at the next layer of the funnel, where we strip away those team records completely and focus intensely on isolated individual matchups. Take tonight's game between the Philadelphia Phillies and the St. Louis Cardinals. From a macro perspective, both teams have incredibly similar records hovering right around that .500 mark. The Phillies are 63-56, the Cardinals are 59-59. Surface-level data would suggest this is a totally even coin toss of a baseball game. But look at the stark contrast hiding right underneath those perfectly matched team records. The Phillies are throwing Painter, who's been struggling immensely with a 1-8 record, a really ballooned 6.48 ERA, and an inflated whip of 1.573. He's just putting way too many opposing batters on base. On the flip side, the Cardinals are starting Dobbins, who boasts a very solid 3.60 ERA and a superior strikeout percentage of 21.3%. So while the team records might look equal, the starting pitching reality is completely lopsided in favor of St. Louis. And that discrepancy right there, that is exactly where an edge lives. Finally, step 5, hidden variables. Now we've reached the absolute bottom of the funnel, the environmental factors that most fans, and honestly even a lot of amateur bettors, ignore completely before the first pitch. Take the Orioles and Twins game tonight at Target Field in Minnesota. Advanced environmental data is projecting a massive 9.3% decrease in expected runs. Just let that sink in for a second. The weather alone is expected to suppress nearly 10% of the offensive output in this game. And this timeline right here brilliantly illustrates why. If we look at the hour-by-hour forecast to Target Field, temperatures are dropping from 83 down to 78 degrees by the late innings. But far more importantly, the humidity is forecasted to climb sharply, from 48% up to 62% as the evening progresses. So why on earth does that matter? Well, high humidity creates atmospheric drag. It literally creates a heavier atmosphere that kills the flight of the baseball, keeping potential home runs trapped inside the park. A sharp bettor is going to use this granular weather data to find incredible value on lower scoring outcomes. For example, taking the under on the run total, exploiting a physical condition that the broader market just hasn't adequately priced into the odds. Just look at this contrast to really put it in perspective. By comparing that suppressed minus 9.3% scoring environment in Minnesota to the slightly elevated plus 4.3% run adjustment for the Rangers and Angels game in Los Angeles tonight, we see how wildly variables can swing from park to park. The macro viewer just sees two standard night games, but the sharp viewer, they see two entirely different physical atmospheres. Okay, let's bring it all into focus with synthesis. So how do we actually put all of this together to secure that elusive sports betting edge? Finding a true edge means moving methodically through these 4 steps. You don't just glance at the standings, you use them as a baseline. Then you analyze the market odds to see what everyone else is expecting. After that, you drill down into the granular pitcher data, just like we saw with Painter and Dobbins, to find the mismatches. And finally, you adjust all of those expectations based on invisible environmental variables, like humidity and temperature. You just keep layering this context, step by step, until a mathematical advantage reveals itself. It completely changes your perspective on the sport, doesn't it? The next time you see a team heavily favored to win on a random Tuesday night, remember the vast, hidden ocean of data swirling beneath that single number, just waiting to be explored. So ask yourself, are you just watching the game, or are you actually seeing the puzzle? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep questioning the numbers, and I'll catch you on the next one.